But where were this brave media? Where were these suddenly constitutionally aware, these woke constitutionalists? Where were they during the entire 8 years of the Obama administration? I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Constitution Corner. Well, we had something that happened over this past week that I think everybody's probably heard a little bit about it. You've probably heard a little bit about it because the American media utterly lost their lunch over this. And I have to say that being no fan of the American media, I suppose it's a very good thing that they called this out. Donald Trump, as you may remember, made a statement to the effect that he is the authority, that not the states, not state governors, that he alone is kind of, in his own phrasing of this, the guy who decides, and that he didn't say this, but the implication was that he doesn't need the Congress, he doesn't need the Senate, he doesn't need the idea that the states are their own entities, that when it comes to something like the coronavirus, he will tell people what he's going to do. When it's time to open the economy, he said he will open it regardless of what the states decide to do. And I'm not going to insult this audience. I have too much respect for this audience to explain to you why that's not constitutional. If you don't know why authoritarian dictatorial edicts from the White House are not constitutional, you have my pity, but go read it. I think you'll find right away in the Constitution why we do not have a government that allows the chief executive, the president of the United States, to simply dictate, right? I understand why Donald Trump does what he does, I think, in this regard, and that's what I want to talk about. There's a big difference between the way Trump talks and the way he governs. And I think a lot of people are happy for that, right? That he doesn't always talk the way he governs. There's very little evidence that Donald Trump has used the American government or his office of presidency to actually behave that way. He's not dictating anything. Many of his good ideas about securing the border, for instance, have been struck down by federal judges. And when Donald Trump's plans, his suggestions, his executive orders are shot down by federal judges, Trump does not ignore the federal judges. There's not a lot of evidence to say that Donald Trump has gone rogue. It just doesn't happen. In fact, when you look at Donald Trump, he is in many regards a very, very pleasant relief from Barack Obama. I started talking about the media when we began this little commentary, and I suppose it's a good thing that the media is willing to see the overreach of a president when that president is a Republican who they really hate. But where were this brave media? Where were these suddenly constitutionally aware, these woke constitutionalists? Where were they during the entire 8 years of the Obama administration when things like Common Core, utterly, completely, and thoroughly unconstitutional? The founding documents, if you want to go back and read your Constitution, you will find zero, absolutely no mention of education. The word never appears in the immediate founding documents. Education is primarily a family matter for the founding fathers, and we know from our constitutional documents that what does not belong to the federal government, what is not specifically laid out as the obligation of the federal government, then it is not allowed to mess with that. It all defers to the states. Think about things like Common Core, a complete federal overhaul of education, done without any constitution due regard or diligence. Not a word from the left-wing media, who cheered the Soviet-style takeover of education. Obamacare and all of the problems with Obamacare. I mean, Chief Justice Roberts had to ignore the government's own argument for why it was constitutional because Chief Justice Roberts knew it wasn't, and Roberts invented out of whole cloth the argument that this was a tax, which is what the federal government was not even arguing. Where was the media for that? They were cheering loud, long, and hard for the unconstitutional imposition of a national health care tax, I guess which is what it ended up being. And there are dozens of other ways. The signing of the Paris Accords, tying America's hands to a completely hypocritical, unjust, and completely worthless climate treaty in Paris. One of the first things Donald Trump is get us out of that. Without any congressional vote, without any discussion amongst the people, just by fiat. You could talk about Benghazi, of course. You can talk about sending a plane full of cash to the Iranians in the dead of night. You can talk about the way he handled military personnel, deserters, Bo Bergdahl. You could talk about a whole bunch of issues. Fast and Furious, right? literally selling guns and exporting guns over the borders for cartel members to use in the hope, the perverse hope that somehow you'd get those guns would be tracked back and you might be able to do something about crime. Cash for clunkers. I mean, my time is going really quick here. This commentary is already over, and I think you see my point. Congratulations to the American media that when Donald Trump justifiably deserved a slapdown for saying intemperate things about his power, you did it. Now, we knew you would do it. There was never a doubt you wouldn't have done it. But I ask you again, where was that zeal and that diligence for 8 years of Obama? And when we start to talk about constitutional questions, Joe Biden is the Democrat nominee. Where is the investigation of his son? Where is the investigation of Burisma? A lot of constitutional issues that you don't want to pay much attention to, Democrats and left-wing politicians and left-wing journalists. Well, don't just know your Constitution, live it. This has been the Liberty News Hour. As always, go to jbs.org for more information.